There have been a ton of big anniversaries recently. There was Mario's 35th, Zelda just had 35th, and of course Pokemon just has 25th. But now everyone, we have the biggest anniversary of them all, being Conker's Bad Fur Day is now 20 years old to the day, nearly old enough to drink in the States. It's been old enough to drink in Europe for a while. So, okay, yeah. Clearly Conker's Bad Fur Day isn't quite as big as Pokemon, although there is a funny story involving that, which I'll get back to later. But this is a game that I think is really interesting for multiple reasons. Mostly because, though, it's a really mature game on Nintendo hardware made by what was almost effectively, seemingly a first-party developer. I mean, technically second-party, but Rare was synonymous with Nintendo during the Nintendo 64 era when this game came out. And this game is such an off-the-wall, wild, wacky adventure type thing. It's even difficult to classify. I guess it's technically a platformer, but it's technically a lot of things. So I thought it'd be fun for us to get together and discuss everything about this game that we remember or have enjoyed for the first time recently, such as in your case, Joey. So we are joined by Joey and Tom to discuss Conker's Bad Fur Day's 20th anniversary. So I guess let's start off with you, Tom, because you grew up with this game like myself. I was 16 when the game came out. You were...
I was, I'd be like 19? I was in first year university, I believe.
Yeah, so what was your memory of this game? Like, I guess what's your overall take on Conker's Bad Fur Day?
My very first memory of maybe Conker's adventure in general is reading in an EGM magazine, 12 Tales is almost complete. No, it was
not even close.
I think it was like 3 years later when Conker's Bad Fur Day actually came out, and just how wacky it was, how it's like, it was really like a swan song for the N64.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like the last game on it that I recall.
One of the last ones, yeah.
Yeah, and at least the last one I got. I just getting there university, having some of my friends bug me. It's like, yeah, I can't wait to go fight some poo or something like that. And but being really excited for it at the time, and I think I played through it in maybe 3 or 4 days tops when I got it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a terribly long game, but that's still a pretty quick turnaround for it. So I should mention just real quick, in case people don't know the backstory of this game. This game began as something entirely different, being 12 Tales, as Tom mentioned, which was going to be another typical Rare-style collectathon platformer in the vein of like Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie. But then Rare realized, or the developers realized, there are way too many of these games. Like, the game wasn't wrapping up in time, and they felt like it was going to be, it wasn't going to reach an audience at that point, just because people were kind of getting sick of collectathons. So Chris Seaver, who was an artist at the time on the game, had the idea to just completely transform it, reuse some of the assets they developed, including the Conker character model, but just completely revamp it and make it just really, really raunchy, really mature, and kind of a parody of itself, where they would poke fun at their own games. So even though the characters here look like they could star in a children's game, they act anything but. This game has cursing out the rear, which are, oftentimes but not always censored, to a point where, even though the game was eventually remade on Xbox about 5 years later, that version ended up being more censored than the 64 version somehow, even though it was originally branded as being less censored. It was be Conker, I think Conker's on, or I forget what it was titled.
Live and Uncut.
Thank you, Live and Uncut.
Live and Reloaded.
Yeah, well, that's what it ended up being.
Changed.
Yeah. This game had a wild history, to the point where Conker, for one, ended up in Diddy Kong Racing before Conker's Bad Fur Day even came out. In his previous, much nicer, child-friendly form, and he also had a Game Boy Color game in which he also had the same friendly vibe. So again, you can see how quickly things changed before Conker's Bad Fur Day ended up taking form inside Rare. And I remember real quick. There was one day where Rare, I think how they announced this game was they had a website for the game where you could just hear a bunch of random sound effects like sawing, and it sounded like something like a workshop almost. And I think you could hear occasional swear words. And if I remember correctly, that's how they announced the game, or as part of the press, part of the build up to it. It was such a weird thing. I don't think that website exists anywhere. I wish there was evidence that this website existed, but I might be the only one who remembers it now. But yeah. Wild game, wild how we got to where we are with it, to this game existing, where it parodied itself, parodied Rare games, parodied tons of movies, and in just a very mature, raunchy way. Joey, You have never played Conker. You had never played this game really before up until super recently. I believe you may even be doing a retro review for it if it's not already up by this point. What did you end up thinking of this game? Like, what was it like for you? How much did you know going into it? What was it like to experience it 20 years after the fact?
Well, at first, when I completed the game, by the time I completed it, I was thinking, like, I'm rather mixed on it. There are parts of the game that don't really age well, and I'm not even talking about content-wise, I'm talking about control and gameplay-wise. There's parts of it that I'll touch upon a little bit later in this discussion, but the more I talk about it, the more I think about it, and the more I write about it, I was started to write about it yesterday at my, I was started writing my retro review about it yesterday, the more I'm just like, this game is so cool in like a super messed up sort of way. Just the fact that even when you mentioned Andre, this game parodies itself. It's Rare making fun of themselves in you would think upon looking at this that maybe another developer worked on it, and a developer who had something out for Rare and was just like, oh, I hate these guys, their games are so childish, I'm gonna make fun of them with this. Nope, this was Rare making fun of themselves, especially when it came to the characters that are inanimate objects with eyeballs, which are just a typical Rare trademark there. And they're saying the most vulgar things, and they're doing the most obscene things. It's wild. It's ridiculous. It's bizarre, and that's what I love most about it, is just the ridiculously bizarre nature of this game. I can't even call it just an adult-themed game or like a mature rated game. This is way beyond adult humor. Yeah. This is something else. This just the fact, like, I knew I was in for something crazy when I got into the part where I'm supposed to get a bunch of cows to poop down a pipe, and gotta get rid of the cows. What do? You just ram through them and have them blow up into smithereens. I'm like,
blood everywhere, poop everywhere.
There's a lot of fluid and liquid in this game.
There is.
Yes. Oh man, it's so gross. It's got its own little charm to it. Although, can you call it charm? What is that? That's its own little disgusting charm, I would say.
It is interesting when you began saying the game goes beyond mature. I wasn't sure quite where you're going with that, but the thought to me is like, calling this game mature is a bit of a misnomer, because it's very juvenile at the same time. It's very, like, a lot of, poop humor, as you already mentioned. Lots of, like, just a lot of scatological jokes, a lot of, like, risque jokes. Some that probably wouldn't fly too well these days, I think. It's, especially, in everything that's changed in the past 20 years. So, it's not a game that's, it doesn't have a really mature sense of humor, but it's still comical, and it can still be enjoyed even as an adult, I think. This game is so complicated, Joey, for me, too, because I think, kind of like you, I don't know if I would actually describe this game as being, like, a great game. Especially if you were somehow to remove all the the humor and content, like the surface level stuff from it. I don't think it plays that well. Like, there's a lot of issues with it. I don't think I would stick with it. And even though I don't find the game to really be like that laugh out loud funny, oftentimes, I'll smirk, but I don't usually laugh at it. There's something about this game that, like, once I started sitting down again just today to replay a bit, like, it kept pulling me through. And even though I was like, there were parts I was getting frustrated with all over again, and I still wanted to see it through, but this game's like just kind of changing things up so often, just throwing new ideas at you pretty much constantly, that you just want to see what's next. Like, even if none of the areas play that well, they play just well enough to keep you engaged and pull you through, just to see, like, what's going to happen to Conker next. Like, what kind of crazy turn is this day going to make, He's having a bad day and it only gets worse and worse.
Seriously, it's because the story is not very, I wouldn't say it's a well-written story. It's basically like, it's they threw stuff at a dartboard to see what's stuck. Like, 1 second you're going to the little barn area, and then you fight a Terminator boss, and then what happens next? Just go to a giant poop mountain, and then after that it's a bunch of catfishes and bulldog sharks, and there's no I can't say the story has a structure. It's also not trying to have a structure. It's like what you said. It's saying, hey, come on, let's go for a ride. It's basically Willy Wonka taking you on a ride in the
Like a
river,
boat
and
ride,
you don't
yeah.
know a boat ride, and you don't know where this boat's gonna go.
Well, let's give some credit to, Pooh Mountain or whatever it is first. They came up with a world that I'm pretty sure was not in any other video game before it. Like, so many times it's like you got your snow world, your lava world. Not the case in Conker.
It's really a good thing that the Nintendo 64 wasn't more powerful than it was, because I don't know if I want to see that world in any more realism than it already was. Although I guess the Xbox version had that to a greater degree.
I haven't seen how it looks in the Xbox version. I don't know if I want to.
Yeah, maybe you're better off.
Kernel of the truth.
They actually did a good job, I think, updating the visuals. But we'll talk more about the Xbox version later. This game is just really something else. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. As you were kind of saying, like, there's not even really a flow to this game. No pun intended, given the poop world.
No.
Like, it's like really the sequences in this game are so loosely connected. Like, you're almost just literally dropping into from one area into a next. So then there's a plot threads pulling you through. But with that said, one of the things I actually do like about this game is, at least in the initial area, they kind of forget about it later on, as I remember correctly. But the first 2 hours, like, whenever you like go between areas or like between scenes, like it adds these little vignettes, these little vignette cutscenes that like fill you in on whatever story there is involving the Black Panther and the quest to hold his table upright so his milk doesn't spill. And in order to do that, they need Conker to act as a table leg. And it's just absurd, but I love how they slowly introduce that as you play through it, and just kind of like a fun way of doing it. And for as silly and dumb and ridiculous as the narrative is, the fact that it has one they kind of like present in the way they did is kind of cool. So so did the humor work for you guys in this game? I mean, for you, Joey, like revisiting it now or visiting it for the first time as an adult, did you find yourself laughing during it, or like did you appreciate the parodies and also, how well did the parodies hold up for you? Because at the time the game came out, some of those parodies felt even old then. Like, there's a parody of Jaws in the game, and now we're 20 years removed from that. So, yeah, how did this pop culture stuff hold up for you?
I thought it held up pretty well. There were some jokes that didn't land for me, like the one involving the cogs, and like I was just like, ooh, that's a little bit touchy there. That's even worse than the sunflower thing. At least that was consensual.
I was gonna say, yeah, there was seemingly some level of consent in the sunflower sequence in the bee. Definitely less so later on. So
exactly, but there were some parts where I think at the beginning is when I like laughed the most, just because what made me laugh the most for some reason was just getting the beehive over to the bee, and it turns out the beehive is a machine gun, and then it's just like, eat lead, mother buzzer, and I'm like, okay, I'm in for this ride.
Real quick, just because it's very pertinent. That apparently is like kind of the turning point for the game. When that's a point, that's I think like one of the first scenes they completed when they realized the game was going to work, and they said like among themselves, we need more beehive scenes. Not literally, but they need more scenes of that caliber, so to speak.
That's pretty much what happened. There's another beehive scene later too. So
there is actually. It literally got added again. So
yeah, and the movie references, I always wondered what the purpose was for them. Like, was it kind of just to... I wonder if it was kind of just to... I wonder if the writers ran out of ideas and they just said, let's just go parody and spoof things. There's nothing wrong with that. But I do feel like the spoofs, they sort of take up the entire last half of the game. There are still references at the beginning, such as the giant Terminator boss and the Jaws reference. Although, like, it's a shark. It's definitely clearly resembling Jaws, but you could still say it's still taking some of its own little creative liberties. I mean, it's a dog shark. It's a bulldog shark. Right. But the dock scene was totally ripped out of Jaws. But yeah, after that, they totally just go off the wall with the Bram Stoker's Dracula, and then Saving Private Ryan gets its own level, and then it just closes out, spoiler alert if you haven't played this 20-year-old game, and then it just goes straight into Matrix, Star Wars, Alien.
It's relentless, yeah.
Yes.
It's nonstop when it comes to the movie references, and and I think, I mean, that I have, again, I didn't play through the whole game again recently, but I feel like it maybe picks up steam then. Although I would say the World War II or the Saving Private Ryan chapter maybe overstayed its welcome a little bit.
It did.
I think. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
I can only imagine. I actually revisited a little bit of that chapter today, and my God, those controls did not age well in the shooting segments. Like,
did you play it on Nintendo 64 or Rare Replay?
Well, I mean, of course I did originally, but today I was replaying it on a Rare Replay.
It's worse on Rare Replay.
Really? Okay, I figured that. It probably feels more natural on the 64 controller. Probably not great, but probably more natural, so...
Yeah, it took a while to get back used to. I played it on my N64, and it's like to revisit those controls instead of like sort of twin stick controls using the C buttons to strafe. It just takes them a while to go back to that point in time and get used to it all over again.
Yeah, and now imagine you're playing it on an Xbox controller, right? So you're strafing with the right control stick, which you normally use to aim, and you're aiming down the sights with the right trigger. The right trigger, not the left one, the right one. And then you aim with the left control stick and you shoot with the left trigger. So confusing.
It is.
Because it's literally the opposite of what you'd expect a shooter game to operate on an Xbox controller.
That's actually a great point. That's why it probably holds up better on 64, or at least in terms of controls, because you know the trigger is used for shooting in that game, and that's how it works. You're using the Z button, which I like. They keep calling the Z button through the dialogue in the game, but displays the proper icon being the left trigger.
Yeah.
On the Xbox version, I mean, or sorry, I should clarify, Rare Replay version of the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess speaking of button prompts real quick though, one of the cool things about Conker's Bad Fur Day that I don't know if I want to say it introduced, but kind of ripped on the idea of what Ocarina of Time did, where Ocarina of Time basically had its own context-sensitive button. But in this game, it takes it to an extreme where they have these context-sensitive button panels to stand on. Press B, and it gives you whatever you need at that point in time, whether it's like an Uzi, or like a slingshot, or pills to cure your hangover, which, by the way, I love how the game opens with you literally having a hangover, just stumbling around, vomiting everywhere, and bloodshot completely.
That's a great intro.
It is a great
love
intro.
the scarecrow that's basically drunk and trying to teach you the game and like barely coherent and talking to you.
Asking for Mexipox, which is supposed to be Pepsi Max, I believe. So I did not get that as a kid.
Man, I didn't even know Pepsi Max was a thing back then. But yeah, I also want to talk about, you did ask me earlier, Andre, also, if the references aged well, so I kind of didn't want to leave that question hanging. But I do think for the most part they do, especially since, the smaller references that are easy to go over people's heads, probably not. I hear there are like Monty Python references that are like in the background. Monty Python fans would get them, but I sure didn't. And but it helps that the movies that they like put in the spotlight are absolute classics.
Right.
Like Saving Private Ryan's a classic, Jaws is a classic, Alien is a classic, Terminator is a classic, and they're still getting new movies. Some of these are still getting new movies. I don't think there's, like The Matrix, for example, new one coming out this year. What do you know? They should make a Conker game to celebrate.
They got kind of lucky there, considering that's probably the newest of the movies they parodied, which is only 2 years old by the point the game came out.
Yeah, they got lucky there.
Yeah, real lucky. It's like, I guess they probably had the idea that that game would or that the movie would last through the generations, but yeah,
exactly.
So that's interesting. That's good to hear because as one who grew up with the game, like I'm just as familiar with the movies that parodied now as I was then. It's just hard for me to gauge. Like, does this really hold up? So it's cool to hear from from a younger generation that it still does, because as you're saying, a lot of those movies are either A, timeless, or B, still relevant because they're getting sequels or whatever else. So
like Star Wars, they didn't touch on Star Wars too much, but it was very clearly that was the Death Star.
Right.
And then, of course, a xenomorph just had to burst out of his chest. And I'm like, okay, did they just give up writing? I'm okay with that, but still.
Oh, yeah. It kind of ties to what I said earlier. Like, nothing makes sense in this game. Nothing ties together. Like, you end up in these, like, regions, but, like, the things that happen within them, like, it doesn't, it's like, there's no reason for any of it. Like, nothing makes sense. Like, why there's this drunk bee here? Well, he is. That's just the way things are,
Exactly.
I find it is. Oh, sorry, Joe. I find it funny that two of Rare's last main games made for Nintendo feature a last boss that is kind of like a twist last boss that ruins the one you're kind of gunning for the whole time.
Star Fox Adventures. Yeah.
Star Fox Adventures General Scales. Like, nope. Now you're not fighting him.
That's a good point. I actually forgot about that. I remember the alien boss, but I forgot how we got from the Panther to the alien boss. Joey, what did you think of the complete spoilers here, by the way, obviously. What did you think of the alien boss, or aliens boss, I should say? What did you think of it?
Okay, just most of the last half of this game frustrated me. I'm gonna be honest.
It can be frustrating, yeah.
Yeah, especially when shooting is involved.
Yeah.
They kind of remedied that a bit with the Matrix part, where you were required to literally do Matrix flips, or else you were just gonna die.
And that part's pretty fun. I thought
it is. Yeah, it is. And the alien boss was really frustrating at first, because I don't think the game does not the game does not give you any notification that you can block, get your arms up. So that took me a while to learn. If you're watching my gameplay footage, yes, I suck. but yeah, and I love how they made it so you had to twirl the alien
like Mario 64.
Like Mario 64.
Yep.
I just want to say, so long, the alien.
Yeah, no, it's a frustrating boss, but also kind of an impressive boss at the same time too. It's just something that, again, that's random and it's kind of fun, but also it's a little bit more difficult than it should be. I think that's often the case in this game, where things are tougher or more frustrating or longer than they should be. And it sucks in a humor-based game because it's not funny the 5th time you see something, right? Nope. It's funny the first time, then it increasingly gets, hearing the same joke over and over, it's entertaining for only so long. But to that point, with the alien boss, I wonder if you encounter this, but I forget how often it comes up. But I remember if you take too long or if you have trouble with it, or maybe it's just random, there's a point where the AI narrator thing, whatever, straight up says, pick the alien up and throw it out the door. I love that.
Yes, it says, if you take too long, it says that very quickly, pick the alien up and shut the bloody door. And when you take too long, it says, you're not very good at this, are you?
Just crapping all over you.
I would have laughed if I would have laughed, but I was mad at that point. I was like, I'm not good at this. Thanks, computer. Thanks.
With spinning the alien, though, what a neat way to end the life of the N64, basically, by the same way you kind of started on the N64, spinning Bowser. So.
I did not think about that. I actually really love that. That's a fun detail. And I actually should mention, speaking of Nintendo references, apparently the developers wanted to include a Pokemon parody at some point, but Nintendo completely shut them down on that. They're like, no. And they also had apparently a KKK reference at some point, also cut. And I think you missed this, Joey, because it's not in the Rare Replay version, which I wish it was, because it's weird starting this game without it. But on N64, you see the N64 logo pop up, in full 3D, bouncing around. Then you hear a chainsaw just tear through it. And apparently Nintendo almost pulled that as well, but I guess they had a meeting with Nintendo and managed to win them over and let them keep that, with Conker literally just tearing through the logo. And do you remember what he says, Tom?
He says, stupid logo, get out of here.
So great.
And, swatting it side to side. I mean, N64 logos was always neat to see what games would have a unique take in it. But
right.
Yeah, that was one of the best for the generation.
And then you also see Banjo's head on the wall in the pub, I believe, and then you also see a Kazooie umbrella too. So they at least fit in some of their own characters.
Exactly, man. If Nintendo's already willing to publish your own little game that makes fun, that's just super mature and super parodying of yourself, at that point they probably said, when they brought up the Pokemon thing, hey, don't push it. We're already letting you.
So yeah, real quick, just to clarify, even though Nintendo clearly had some level of oversight here, it apparently was self-published by Rare, at least in the States. So even Nintendo didn't publish it here. Yeah, they're like,
oh,
no.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think Tom was telling us off camera, you were reminding us, if you take a look at the box, there's giant labels on it. This is not a game for kids. This is 17 and up, making that very clear, especially in a game, on a box that features these big cartoon characters, like Conker himself, and also his girlfriend, who's dressed a little scantily, so that might be your first clue that this isn't meant for kids. But I do want to just get back to the point, just for our younger audience who probably may not even heard of this game. This game is, it's wild thinking back that this game even existed, particularly during this era, where Nintendo was, by and large, extremely family friendly. They still are, obviously. But this game was so out of left field. which is also an older pun because that was the developer of Nintendo's at the time too, but not from left field. This game was just so weird, saying on Nintendo platform, from their key second party developer, starring a cartoon character that had been in other family friendly games, and just swearing up a storm, drinking, hungover, peeing on other characters in the game. There's all kinds of sexual innuendo. The marketing campaign for this game was just wild. There was like a preview event, I think, at like a bar. I think, Joey, you reminded me that I think Playboy did like a feature on this game at some point.
They ran like a whole marketing campaign for it.
Wild. If you look up the TV ad for it, it is it's something else, involving a shockingly realistic looking squirrel in a hotel room, and I won't say anything more. You can look it up and you'll find it yourself. Yeah, it's it's pretty it's something else. It's just wild that this game exists. So I guess, Joey, like, for you, were you surprised by anything in this game, or did you kind of have a general idea going in just based on hearsay over the years, or?
I both. I had a general idea that this was just a raunchy old little weird 3D platformer game. I didn't realize how raunchy it was until I got to the part where I was making cows poop down a thing, and then you viciously make them blow up into smithereens. I was like, okay, it's this kind of game, huh?
It's so messed up because, like, as an adult revisiting these parts, even just thinking about it, it's like you were basically almost like drugging those cows and forcing them to do this thing they didn't want to do. And oh man, it's this game.
And you murder them in the worst possible way.
Yeah, you do.
I remember one of the scenes that was hard when I played it and the first time through was the Caveman Boss, and what you had to do to him with the dinosaur, like basically a Yoshi, and just like bite him in the groin several times to take him out. Like, and the crunch noise. Oh, that's no good.
I mean, yeah, there is a groin thing, but I think it's almost worse what happens after, where you literally just take a chunk out of his butt, and he's missing like this huge chunks of flesh. You almost feel bad for this poor guy.
Man.
And I completely forgotten about the whole like innuendo involving his giant bone and how self-conscious he is of this, and they almost took, like, the whole thing is almost like the boss fight from Yoshi's Island with what's his name, Bert the Embarrassed or something. I forget his name. The first boss where you keep hitting with eggs and his pants eventually fall and he gets embarrassed. It's like taking that to an extreme in Conker's Bad Fur Day.
To the extreme. I personally was a fan of the big machine. I forget exactly what
the broiler?
Yeah, it's called the big guy apparently, and he's got a giant pair of balls, and you just gotta keep hitting them. And first of all, he loves his own voice. It's like, yes, I will kill you or something. And then when you hit him, he's like, my balls. And I laughed every time. I thought that was funny.
that and you want to talk about painful, Tom? That was painful. He's like cinder blocks, basically, just smashing them together.
Conker just holds up bricks basically and smiles.
Conker is like, it's like, man, what did he do to deserve this? Jeez. I do love the Broiler's voice though, and also the whole scene like leading up to that too, involving the fire demons and how you have to put them out, as I kind of alluded to earlier, by literally just getting tanked and peeing all over them, which is a mechanic that comes back into play, I think, later on during either earlier or after during the rock club sequence, Tom.
Yeah, you have to pee on rocks and they curl into a ball and then you move them through doorways.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting that you had to pee on them to roll them. I had to look up how to that you had to do that because there was no indication. Like, there was some indication you had to pee, but I was just like, who do I pee on? I'm peeing on this lady right here, and nothing's happening.
This game doesn't tell you anything. I was getting annoyed during the I was in the barn segment, and I was getting annoyed at those freaking bees and leading them back to the sunflower. It doesn't tell you how many bees there are. It doesn't tell you that I think you lose them if you fall in the water.
Yep.
It doesn't tell you that you can have more than one set of them follow you at a time, which
What? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know either.
You can. You get a huge swarm around you.
I discovered that only on my second time after dying and losing all the bees. I have to find them again. I'm like, I'm getting so annoyed with this. And they barely even tell you that, like, I mean, again, how little things make sense. Like, you don't even know to get bees after talking to the sunflower until you randomly run into the bees, and then Conker's like, oh, I wonder if you can go tickle the sunflower, and that's when it starts clicking. But even finding the bees is a pain. They have them in like these impossible to reach locations where you can fall off and lose them, or there's one by the entrance, and they're almost impossible to see until you're like right next to them.
Yeah, I missed that one on my first time through.
I did too.
And this level reminds me that fall damage in this game was a big mistake.
If you fall from like 6 inches, you take damage. It's like, what?
Yes. Yep.
It's yeah. They went a little extreme on that. Like, yeah, they should just turn that off, or at least giving you a higher altitude to fall before, because the barrier to taking damage is so little.
Yep, and there's parts you can't avoid fall damage at all. Like the barn, I'm sure if you tried, maybe you could avoid fall damage, but at the Rock Solid Club, when you fall down the tubes that you're supposed to go down, you still take fall damage. And it's just, that's not good design, guys.
I find one thing too is that you would think you can do a tailspin while falling down, but no, you just start going into a different animation where you are falling. You have to do a little hop and then try to do a tailspin if you want to like get off the barn roof and maybe not take any damage.
Yeah. And that kind of gets my point earlier. Like, there are a lot of frustrating elements of this game. Again, if you remove all the humor and fun things about like the presentation, I don't think it'd be a very good game. But it does enough right in a way that we haven't seen before that you just want to keep seeing what's next. Even though it can be very frustrating along the way. But at the same time, taking damage reminded me of like one of the ways in which this game kind of like pokes fun at the genres, like how in this game you, for whatever reason, eat chocolate to refill your health, but at some point you see a mad scientist who's like, hey, I got this anti-gravity chocolate working. This knocks out the window, providing some context why you're collecting these floating collectibles in the world that float for no other reason. I like how even though this game isn't really a collectathon, you're still collecting money, and how the money is personified in this game and talks to you and kind of like either yells at you or insults you, and that's kind of fun. Just something that adds a little twist onto what we're used to.
They call Conker a stupid ginger.
Yeah, right, exactly. I'm trying to think of like other ways they parody things. Oh, like the platforming game joke involving the sunflower, of course.
This is a platformer.
there are some more subtle ones too. We already had the Bowser's or the Mario 64 reference. I think there might be a Donkey Kong reference in the Pooh segment when you're rolling the Pooh balls down the hills with the cows. I don't know if that was intentional or not. It reminded me of Donkey Kong. But yeah, there's a lot going on in this game. Like, there's so many parodies. I'm sure I've missed. I'm sure there's some I still miss to this day.
Yeah, there was another, because the list I saw where it was listing parodies, some of them were like, okay, that's a stretch. Like, they were saying a line that's been in a bunch of movies, which is just like, okay, that's kind of a stretch. I don't know if that's really a parody. But yeah, there are parts of this game where I'm just like, this hasn't aged well, and I'm still surprised. It has a 92 on Metacritic with a must-play status. I know standards were different in 2001, but I'm just like, were they that used to inverted camera controls? Because I can stand the camera controls in this game.
Yeah, the camera did not age well at all, but... Sorry, were you going to say something, Tom?
No, yeah, the inverted camera. The camera, it's tough, it's tricky. It kind of shoves itself into corners, like going against the Terminator Hay Boss, like before you fall down. That was tricky, just lining myself up and going around, and in the pit with the sewage, like I was barely seeing the pipe work because the cameras kept going on the Hay Boss, so I had to kind of like guess. I was fighting the camera.
The camera straight up sucks in this game. I'm just gonna say it. And I kept reversing the controls too, but I'm so used to how like 3D All-Stars worked in that game. I don't fault the game for that these days, obviously, but the camera just itself doesn't work great. It doesn't show you what you want to see all the time. So that can be frustrating. But to your point, Joey, about why this game may have reviewed so well back in the day, I think part of it is that, I mean, of course, beyond just it being kind of something pretty fresh and new that we hadn't seen and like kind of taking the wind out of itself. But this game is also like really impressive technically, and that's even in a post-Dreamcast era. Like, this game, I feel like almost looks like it could be a Dreamcast game at points. Now, I do want to amend that with the point that we were playing it on a rare replay. Obviously, it's a higher resolution than it was originally, and running at a smoother frame rate than it was originally. Playing at 64, I remember there were some parts where that game would really chug, and it ran much better on rare replay. But putting that aside, this game otherwise looks identical to how it did before. and it looks good. Like, it has impressive lighting effects, or like real-time shadows that like cast in different directions or change length. The facial animation is incredible, especially for Conker, where it actually reminded me of Wind Waker, where one of the reasons why they went with the art style they did in Wind Waker was so you could easily see Link's expressions. And going back to Conker, I'm like, I think Conker's more expressive. Like, Conker's face is changing constantly in relation to what you're doing or what's happening. Even during his idle animations, I don't know if you watched them, Joey. There's like 15 of them. I think we did a whole Cool Bits video on it. And he has his face is animated each one perfectly. And like even the detail of like when you're climbing up the barn area, if you look at the very top, you can see the entire world around you. You can see, I think, every chapter represented, like the World War chapter. You can see the final castle you go to. You can see, I'm trying to remember what else there is. Every other region, basically, you can see. And then you add on to that the massive amount of dialogue, the voiced dialogue on the cartridge game. Like, everything about this game, even little details like how you drip water when you get out, or when you pick up cash and, you know, bills fly out of you. Like, this game has so many details that look extremely impressive. I feel like that might have been part of the reason why it reviewed so well. Like, it felt like a AAA experience at that time.
Wow, that's really neat. What I noticed was, what I was most impressed by was the voice. Not just the voice work, but like how quick they went back and forth between voiced dialogue, especially when I was playing like Kingdom Hearts 3 in like 2019, and the dialogue is like, there's like 5 seconds between characters talking, and it's just like, okay, come on. But meanwhile, and there's a part in the Big Mighty Pooh boss fight where he was like, I'll shove you up my butt, your butt, my butt, your butt, and it was just quick back and forth, and I was like, this is impressive, like for a Nintendo 64 game.
Yeah, I almost, when playing it, like, you forget it. I forget it was on N64 at first, almost. It's so good. And it even looked all right on my HD TV, surprisingly, coming out of composite. But on a cartridge, too, with no load times, I miss no load times. That's like, it's been a while. Like, you talk about the PlayStation 5 being fast. I'm sure this is faster. And, you know, I do miss that in games. The sound itself is also super impressive, the fit on the cartridge, and that Rare got this working without the expansion pack that other games were starting to require at the end of the N64's life. I think Donkey Kong 64 almost didn't do it, but there's some game-breaking bug, but still, like, to pull that off, it's impressive.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like I said, it really almost looks like it could be a Dreamcast game at points, which is quite impressive. Yeah, and it's just like throwing new things at you constantly. Like, there's new visuals, new scenes, new areas, new characters. Like, it really feels like, I mean, they use the biggest cartridge. I believe they use the biggest cartridge possible on the system, which is, I believe, 64 megabytes or 512 megabits. That was the same size, if I remember correctly, as Resident Evil 2, which had entire, FMVs in it. So that shows you how much they had to cram into Conker to make that space worthwhile, and it really is an impressive effort. And to your point, Joey, about the voice acting, for one, the voice acting is actually surprisingly good across the board. Certainly among Rare's best. Definitely besting Perfect Dark, and all the male characters minus the Great Mighty Pooh were done by the game's director, being Chris Seaver, who also, of course, voiced Conker. And there are a couple times, like, some of the characters you can tell, like, some of them all sound like a little bit similar, but the more distinct ones sound very distinct. And that's really impressive that one guy who's not even a professional voice actor, as far as I'm aware, made that happen.
Yeah, good old Chris Seaver. And he, and someone else, I'm looking up her name too. They also had one lady voice all the women characters too, Louise Ridgway. So yeah, granted there's not that many female characters, but she also did a good job. They all did different accents. Some of them, it's funny because they are British people, but sometimes they try to do American accents, and I think they do them bad on purpose sometimes. Like Conker, I'm pretty sure he's supposed to sound American, but he still says things like bollocks, I guess, and all other stuff. And yeah, it's kind of funny. I also love the dung beetles with the Cockney accents. I'm pretty sure they're Cockney, but yeah, those are great.
What's actually really funny that you bring up the American point, because the voice actress specifically mentioned that they asked her to speak in an American accent, but she apparently had like never left the country. Really, she's like, I don't know how Americans speak, so she just threw in like every now and then as Barry, and hey, it worked. So
it worked. Like I She's never even seen American movies? Oh my goodness.
Now, you actually kind of reminded me of another point, perhaps. Maybe a little bit more serious here. Like, you mentioned how there aren't like a ton of women characters in this game. I think that kind of strikes that perhaps one of the issues with the game these days, in that there aren't many women in this game, and the ones that are here aren't particularly strong characters. They are there primarily as a foil, or, you know, for jokes to be bounced off of, or eye candy, or, you know, they exist to, I basically titillate either for the in-game characters or, God forbid, the people playing the game. There's actually a point where Conker even opens up like a Playboy or something, and if you zoom the camera in, you can see that there's like a fully nude like badger or something, or some kind of character on there. It's bizarre.
Was this Howard the Duck?
Yeah, the point is, the women characters aren't treated particularly. I mean, no character really treated particularly respectfully here, but in particular, the women characters stand out, and I think it's something they cannot get away with these days, and shouldn't get away with these days, because
I think the only two female characters in this game that don't die are the Sunflower and the Cogs, which I guess are three characters technically, but yeah, like most of them get viciously murdered.
Yeah, or something else, as you're,
Yes.
I mean, a lot of things happen to the characters in this game, and yeah, that humor I don't think would fly in this day and age. Like, they were very clearly targeting the kind of like humor that South Park was in its time too, which is different than the humor South Park has even these days, where they were aiming, you know, for that kind of like, you know, either gross out, you know, edgy, teenage, you know, humor, and that's the part that has aged the least well, I think.
It has. It totally has.
Yeah, it's aged as well as the milk on the Panther's nightstand or whatever 20 years later, so...
Yeah, that's why I don't think we'll ever see another Conker game, or at least of this caliber. We'll see him in games like Project Spark Part 2, maybe. Gosh, remember that? That made so many people mad.
Do you remember that terrifying looking AR game, the HoloLens with a baby Conker or something they had?
What? I need to see this.
Yeah, it's Kid Conker at one point. That was like one of the last
freaky.
Conkers.
It's called Young Conker. That's disgusting.
Yeah,
that is gross.
It's weird. Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned the sequel, because there actually were plans to make Conker's other Bad Fur Day, but apparently, you know, once the Microsoft buyout happened, they shot down the idea for whatever reason. Possibly based on the sales of the Xbox remake of the original. I don't know. That's only my own speculation. But or maybe that was in replacement of it. I forget which.
I think it was in replacement of that.
Which is such a bummer, because I would have much preferred a sequel than the weird remake we ended up with. Now, and I guess real quick, Joey, are you familiar with the Xbox remake at all?
A little bit. I've only seen bits and pieces of it. I haven't played it, but I do remember thinking, wow, Conker's fur looks really good. It's it's a really good looking game. I don't know. It looks
amazing.
I don't know if it's any good. I haven't played it, but yeah, bring it to Game Pass, Microsoft, please.
Yeah, right, they should. Yeah, like for as great as the game looked on 64, the upgraded Xbox is unreal. Like, it probably still is one of the best looking games on that platform. It's fantastic. The weird thing about it though is, as I mentioned earlier, it's not an uncut version of the game. It's literally the same game with much better graphics and some weird changes and additions. Like, one, it is now more censored, including the Great Mighty Pooh song to some degree, and it also has like this weird stutter halfway through, which I don't think they ever fixed. So the song has a weird, like, abrupt, like, just moment in it, which didn't exist before. And they also tweaked some of the gameplay, where instead of having a frying pan, which is kind of funny, they gave him like a spiked baseball bat, which is just kind of disturbing. And they even mentioned that. I was looking up an interview about the game, and they mentioned that was one of the ideas with the game originally, before they changed it to a frying pan, because they thought that'd be funnier. And it is. A spiked baseball bat is just malicious. Like, this is brutal. And then they introduced enemies for you to just beat on with it for whatever reason. But I know you play it too, Tom, right? I remember you were at the E3 with me where they revealed that game, or had it playable.
Yeah, I remember it looked great. I'm gonna have to go back and try the baseball bat. I don't remember that in my memory, so... But yeah, the frying pan is way better than that.
Yeah.
But
I think... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it did look amazing. Like, considering how good Star Fox Adventures, looked on GameCube, and being one of the best looking games, like, almost throughout that generation. Conker on Xbox, it also, like, raised the bar in another similar way on the platform.
Right.
Yeah, it did.
The only major gameplay change I can recall, besides the small additions I just mentioned, is that you might remember this better than I do now, Joey, because you just played it. Is in the war chapter, there's a part where you have to, like, I think lead electric eels to light up, to provide power to the area. They completely cut the electric eel segment. That area is still there, but they completely cut the part. You have to walk around or swim around in the water, leading them around. Would you miss that, do you think?
No. I mean, it was, I don't know why they just, of all the things they decided to cut, why that? It doesn't even take that long. It's just pointless. But so it's like, they could have cut other pointless crap out of that game too. Like, I don't understand what they were thinking there, but...
Yeah, there's a few things. I guess also just off the top of my head, I haven't played this game in 15 years now, or the remake, but they also tweaked the shooter controls to be more like a standard shooter, which probably is a great idea. That probably holds up much better. And then they also added in the Dracula chapter, they gave Conker a Van Helsing hat, like I think like the main character from that movie. Just add in another little reference.
No, that's a dated reference.
That's a reference that ironically does not hold up. So the one thing they added, the most recent thing they added,
I know Van Helsing as a character is timeless, but like they're clearly referencing the stupid Hugh Jackman movie there, aren't they?
Well, I was gonna say with the Xbox One too, they had more of a focus on multiplayer with Xbox Live, with the N64 one, I was surprised to see there was multiplayer on that one too. I was like, I don't remember this at all.
Yeah. I didn't touch the multiplayer.
Oh, you guys missed out. If you don't remember it, you need to play it. Oh, the multiplayer was something amazing in that game. There were like somewhere between like 7 to 9. I combined those two. 7 to 9 different modes. Some of which had asynchronous or asymmetrical combat, where like two people were teddies and the others were the in the game Frenchies, and the Frenchies had to run up the beach to get to safety while the teddies are trying to mow them down. It's horrible, but it's also amazing. There's a similar caveman mode where some people are playing as raptors while the other people are playing as cavemen, and the cavemen are trying to steal the raptors' eggs. There was a heist mode where you're trying to steal from like a central vault to try to get the most money. The multiplayer was actually amazing. I was so disappointed that they completely revamped it entirely for the Xbox remake and just turned it into a more conventional class-based shooter, which I understand is pretty good on its own right, but it didn't feel like Conker to me, and I don't know why they didn't retain it. So I'm kind of happy that it's still at least in the Rare Replay version, at which it runs at a better frame rate, I'm sure, than it did before. But it was a lot of fun.
All I need is someone to play it with, and my wife doesn't. If my wife doesn't like games with good controls, she's gonna not like this.
All right, Joey. Once the pandemic is over, like we're all meeting up and we're playing Conker's Bad Fur Day. We'll stream this. It's gonna be amazing.
Oh God, yes.
All right. Real quick, let's talk. We talked a little bit about some of the scenes in the game, like just some of the different gameplay elements or parodies. But I want to know, what was your favorite moments in this game? Like, just give me a handful. Like some of your favorite parts, whether it was to play or to watch. What did you like most so far, or about this game that you remember? Let's start with you, Joey. You played the most recently.
Yeah. So I'm thinking the first part with the beehive was awesome, just because it was so. It just came out of nowhere, like, oh, this is a machine gun. Okay. And then the next part was, of course, just Great Big Mighty Pooh. Like, yeah, of course. Although,
infamous.
In my version, the boss fight glitches for me sometimes. He doesn't do the so I can't throw toilet paper, and I got to keep restarting that for it to work. So
really, well, I do know the later get into it, I think you have to wait longer. But did you wait long enough, and it just didn't?
I did. He just stood there forever, so that was strange. But after that, the big guy with his brass balls, and I forget what Conker says. It's like a bourgeois brass boiler. Oh no, that was great. Just to hear his screams in pain, it was just perfect. And yeah, I think those are like the top three. No. Final part was when the shark just ate all the catfish, and I'm like, yes. You get what you deserve for trying to cheat me out of my money.
Nice. How about you, Tom? What are some of your favorite memories from this game?
So definitely Great Mighty Pooh, and that area being the music, being just fart noises and squishy sounds. Terminator 2 Hay Boss, and the lead up to that with the pitchfork and stuff. It's having a hay pitchfork, like kind of go to hang itself. And then a giant hay boss going, my nemesis is gone. Now time to wander. aimlessly.
Real quick, I have to tell everyone, this is the quote Tom still uses to this day.
Yeah. It's like, it's time for you to wander aimlessly now. It's like that. 'Cause it's so true. It's like, I'm just going on a walk aimlessly.
And he turns into the Terminator. Like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just love that so much. And, rock solid being in a club and just so colorful and different for at the time. And, of course, peeing on the rocks. It was, as a younger man, it was pretty hilarious. Now I was trying to play it again and, like, this is frustrating me. And how stupid it is for a table to need a squirrel to replace a leg. And at the end, like, the scientist going, the gestation is almost complete. And it's like, what? And have the alien like burst out after the Panther King was complaining about stomach pain for so long. Those are some of my most memorable moments.
Yeah, this game is so full of WTF moments, just like constantly. It's like, what is even happening here? Like, getting back to the pitchfork and hay segment, like, for whatever reason, you have to use a pitchfork, you ride it around, and you have to hit the hay pile, and it catches fire for some reason from being hit by a pitchfork.
Spark. I want to say it's a spark.
Sure.
Somehow.
Let's
Project
go with that.
Spark.
Hey, there we go. They were leading up to all this time.
Exactly.
Which, for those who aren't familiar, there was like a little Conker spin-off made for Project Spark, which is kind of like a fun little thing. But I don't think they ever finished it. I think it was intended to be
They
like
never
a chapter.
did.
Yeah, that's so sad.
Project Spark just died too.
And
like, it wasn't getting the amount of traction that
They actually-
Microsoft wanted.
And they actually brought, I think, Chris Seaver back to voice Conker, which was awesome. And
They
to
did.
that point, I actually have a Conker doll that released, I think, or stuffed toy that released about a year ago, and he has like a bunch of voice lines from the game, and I love it. So, some of my favorite sequences, I think, off the top of my head, I think the whole like mobster segment or sequence where like the cutscene where he's like going around the table and he's holding a bat and he just beats on one of them. And then I love the Back to the Future caveman sequence where they're riding on the hoverboards and you have to go chase them down. And it's frustrating at times, but I still really enjoy that segment. And I also really like the boss fight with the dinosaur and Booga, I think, the giant guy. I just kind of thought that was more fun than I remember it being on 64, and just visually impressive. Like, you're in this huge arena, you're taking on this giant boss, and then I don't know if I forgot it or I didn't notice it before because of the resolution, but I never noticed that everyone in the audience are holding like little Conker signs. I thought that was funny or cute. So, and yeah, there's just so many moments in this game. Like the Terminator references are fun. I'm a big Terminator fan. I like the Matrix sequence, and then the aliens boss fight is great.
Slow motion in the Matrix part was pretty cool at the time, really.
That was super impressive. Yeah, you got like the slow motion bullets creating the little ripples, and they did a great job. That opening segment in particular is almost shot for shot from the Matrix. So they walk in, put the bag on the conveyor belt. Yeah, it's pretty great. So
Conker's unstoppable. He gets these powers out of nowhere. And yeah, he's the most OP video game character of all time.
It's actually kind of fitting now that I think about it, because he like how Neo got his powers through the Matrix from their hacking. At the end of the game, Conker also gets assistance from a programmer, right?
Yes.
By freezing the boss, I think, as I recall. So maybe they were helping them all along.
That's got to be cheating, man. That's like also he literally turns into an anvil sometimes, so he is powerful.
Yeah. Speaking of anvils, one of the last parts I wrapped up before we're doing this discussion was at the top of the barn. You just take this great leap, not even knowing why, just because there's a couple of candy pieces floating, and then it's like, oh, press B now, because the light bulb appears. I'm like, oh crap, I better do that. And you turn to the anvil and slam into the ground. Again, nothing makes sense.
It's called a leap of faith. Assassin's Creed ripped it off. So.
Yeah, totally. It started here. That's right.
Yes.
All right, we've been talking a lot about Conker. Do we have any final thoughts about this game before we wrap it up for its 20th anniversary?
I do think every person who plays video games should play this at least once in their life, just because it is a part of gaming history due to how absurd it is, and like no other.
He said doo-doo.
I noticed it when I said it too, and I'm like, I'm chatting with adult men. They won't make fun of me. Nope. But we're talking about Conker, so there you go. But
fitting. Yep.
yeah, and like no other company was doing a game like this back then. So yeah, definitely give it a shot. You might not love it, but I think it's worth a playthrough.
What do you think, Tom?
For me, Conker, it was so different at the time, and it still is with not many games following suit. A technical showcase back then, it was really impressive. It was maybe at the end of Rare's heyday, really. You think about
because there's a lot of hay piles
yeah,
in the game?
the hay piles. Oh, darn it.
The Termin hater.
Oh!
Yes.
That's a good one, Joey. But part of it, too, with the context-sensitive nature of many different control schemes, like maybe none of them control super great in a way. It's like it's not like running around like with Mario and Mario 64. Some of the jokes, you couldn't do 20 years later. Like a lot of it, would be very touchy these days too. So keep that in mind if you do play it.
Mm-hmm. Real quick, there is specifically a word that I know is particularly offensive in Europe these days, at least, and it would not fly at all, I think, because there have been other Nintendo games that included it inadvertently without realizing how offensive it is there, and they had to be patched or re-released later, I think. So.
Oh wow, I have to look that up later, I guess, but just to make sure. And with the game, though, I think they could make another Conker again based off movie parodies and a different type of adult humor, but it wouldn't be the same for sure.
No, I mean, yeah, like even now, it's like even if you're trying to make a game like, or even any form of media that's supposed to be offensive, there is sort of lines to cross that you shouldn't cross at some point. And I definitely feel like jokes about sexual abuse are one of them where it's like, no.
That does not hold up at all. So, in fact, now that I think about it, we will probably put like maybe a content warning at the start of this video just to be clear that Conker does contain some elements that have, not aged well at all. Mm-hmm. And kind of to that point, as you were kind of saying, Tom, about like I don't know they can make a sequel these days, and not just for those reasons, but this game is such a product of its time. It exists because it was parodying what it was before, and the games that came before it. And those games, don't really exist so much. I mean, they don't have to riff on it exactly, but just everything about this game is such a product of that moment 20 years ago, Yeah. And even, and even if they were to make a sequel, like, who would helm it? Would Chris Seaver come back to do it? I mean, I think it was such a personal game too that I don't even know like how you would go about making a sequel to it. I think the game we have is all that there may be. Because even like in the little forms of seeing Conker come back, like even that wasn't sustainable or long lasting. And even look at how Project Spark worked. That Conker was already different to the Conker in this game, if I remember correctly. So
yeah. You would have to basically have Rare gift the IP or give it to Chris Seaver. Chris Seaver then get money from Playtonic's new publishing branch and then make the game. That's maybe the only way something like that could happen.
Exactly. So yeah, that is it for Conker's 20th birthday celebration here for Conker's Bad Fur Day. I think we covered a lot of territory here, so more than I expected. Definitely an interesting game. I think I would agree that it's probably worth checking out. I don't know if I would say it's a must-play myself, but I could see why some might consider it to be. Just keep in mind, parts of it have aged, both gameplay and thematically, but there is also nothing quite like Conker's Bad Fur Day. So if you want to see like an interesting time capsule that still, while at times not holding up, also strangely holds up better at other times than you might expect, it's definitely a unique, interesting game that we may never see the likes of again. So, definitely an interesting nugget in Nintendo's history. So, yeah, there you have it. That's Conker's 20th. So thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider clicking that subscribe button and ringing that bell, and checking out the other videos on the right for other possible Conker-related content and other things too. With that, we'll catch you later. Bye, everyone.